Smaller agencies and small brands tend to look at branding as it's a logo, it's a color scheme, it's design elements. However, what makes the big brands successful is strategy. And the strategy is specifically, they articulate very well what makes them different and better than their competitors. And that's kind of the key to everything. If you can articulate what makes your brand or your client's brands different and better than their competitors, everything else is easy.
Welcome to the DesignRush Podcast. I'm your host, Vianca Mayer. Today we're joined by David Gaz, founder of the Bureau of Small Projects, an agency that helps Davids take on Goliaths, bringing the same branding firepower as giants like Bill Nye the Science Guy, Dr. Pimple Popper, and even Switzerland. Yep, the literal country.
When you're competing with people for those Fortune 500 companies and big brands, all of your competition is very, very good at what they do too. So what you need to do is get their attention, which means winning awards or else do very interesting high-profile projects that get these folks' attention.
In the world of Fortune 500s, it's a battlefield, with 57% of top companies being driven by marketing and branding pros at the helm. Standing out means leveling up your game.
So I think the key metric that we look at is the return on ad spend. And that's the only one that matters. But in order to do that, you can't just run the ads. You have to look at the website and you have to make changes to the website or wherever the ads deliver the traffic.
For big brands, it's all about results, not clicks. Agencies need to prove that their efforts drive real business outcomes. With return on ad spend benchmarks like 6.5 to 1 in industries like e-commerce, big brands are looking for tangible conversions, not just traffic. If this has you fired up, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to stay in the loop with all of our latest podcasts. David, a very warm welcome to the DesignRush Podcast. How are you today?
Vianca, I'm doing great. Absolutely great. I love DesignRush, and I'm so happy to be part of this podcast.
Thank you so much. That means a lot coming from you. Honestly, I know we have sort of a long-standing relationship with you now, and I can't tell you how excited I am to pick your brain today. Okay, I'm going to jump right in because I don't want to take up too much of your time today. So you've worked, I know, with big names like Bill Nye the Science Guy, Stanford University, and Levi's, and a bunch more. Now, I know you don't really work with those bigger companies or big name brands like Disney and stuff anymore, but I do want to pick your brain on how smaller agencies and other businesses can really tap into those types of markets. So the first thing that I want to ask you now, David, is what are the 4 top qualities that these big brands are really searching for in an agency partner, and how can smaller businesses or nonprofits like how you work with now apply those same principles to find their ideal match?
Excellent question. I'd argue that there's only one thing, not 4 things, that an agency has to do if they'd like to work with big brands. And that is, you got to be really, really, really good at what you do. Our niche, as you mentioned, is we apply the big brand experience and Fortune 500 experience to small business, startups, and nonprofits. Everybody in our team, of course, is a specialist, and they all have the big brand and Fortune 500 experience. Now, for us, that's very advantageous because when we're up against competing agencies, competitors, most of the people that we're up against do not have that level of experience. And once they get that level of experience, that one thing that they're very, very, very good at what they do, they usually go after the Fortune 500 companies and big brands. Now, that leaves the field kind of wide open for us because most of our competition are either not very good at what they do or they're just kind of getting their footing together. So if you want to make that jump, you got to be extremely good at what you do. And then I'd say the other 3 things are more around getting their attention. Because when you're competing with people for those Fortune 500 companies and big brands, all of your competition is very, very good at what they do too. So what you need to do is get their attention, which means winning awards which is a whole rat race that Vianca I can get you up to speed with if you'd like. Or else do very interesting high profile projects that get these folks' attention. Because when you compete with them, you're dealing with a bunch of very well-funded agencies, people that are very good at what they do. And often it comes down to I have to go golfing with the client. I got to fly to Seattle to meet with them. Or I have to do the entire project for free to pitch to them. I wouldn't say it's highly competitive. And when everybody else is willing to do an entire pitch for free and you aren't, those are the people that are going to land the job. And so you just have to be willing to do all of that if you want that type of business. And the competition is brutal because everybody you're up against is very, very good at what they do.
Absolutely. I think that's some of the best advice and most honest advice and tips I've heard on this show so far. So thank you so much for that, actually, David, for really breaking through that. Okay, so also, again, through your contributions that I know you've done through Forbes and Fast Company as well, you've highlighted strategies that big brands can really use or do use to boost visibility. So I wonder, what smart ways can smaller agencies, create a bigger impact on a tight budget, using those same strategies?
Another excellent question. I would say that one of the biggest differences between the way small agencies and small brands handle branding and marketing, and what's different from the bigger agencies and big brands, is big agencies and big brands tend to approach branding from a perspective of strategy. Smaller agencies and small brands tend to look at branding as it's a logo, it's a color scheme, it's design elements. Now, all of those things, again, when you're dealing with this big brand world, the expectations are your logos are absolutely stunning, you're great with color, and every design detail is absolutely perfect. However, what makes the big brand successful is strategy. And the strategy is specifically, they articulate very well what makes them different and better than their competitors. And that's kind of the key to everything. If you can articulate what makes your brand or your client's brands different and better than their competitors, everything else is easy. All it is a matter of getting the word out. And never in the history of the world have we had more channels to get the word out to people.
I want to ask you, could you share a collaboration that really, really stood out for you? I mean, what made it successful for both your team and yourself and the client? And how can, again, smaller agencies replicate that success?
Again, probably the one I'd like to highlight is Bill Nye, the Science Guy. I grew up with Bill Nye, was a huge fan before he reached out and almost hit the ceiling when he reached out to us to rebrand the Planetary Society. Now, this was somebody who's wicked smart, so rebranding for somebody that's wicked smart is just absolutely nuts anyway. And then when it's somebody that you just put on a pedestal, it just doesn't get much better than that. What was really cool about it is that they everything they do is extremely good, and they're they are the best of the best of the best of the best. We like to say the smartest people in the world work with the Bureau of Small Projects, and I think folks like Bill and Stanford and all of that kind of back it up. But anyway, what was really, really cool about this was we're taking an iconic brand, an iconic logo, and we had to bring it up to date for now. It was all kind of conceived back in the 70s. Carl Sagan was the original CEO and founder of the Planetary Society. So everything they had was a little bit dated like the 70s, and we needed to bring it every single bit of their communication up to, the aughts or whatever we're calling our generation now. And so it was very, very cool. Their original logo was drawn on a napkin by Carl Sagan himself. And the fundamentals of their logo were awesome. And so it was almost like collaborating with Carl Sagan, and then Bill Nye's equally as influential and smart and talented as well. So it really came down to what I just mentioned, highlighting what they do differently and better than their competitors. Now, this was very challenging because their competitors are the best of the best of the best, specifically NASA, SpaceX, folks like that. To throw them in the mix was funny because it's not, and this is actually an excellent question or topic to dive in, because when we say different and better than your competitors, it doesn't mean different and better in everything. Like Bill Nye, he has a way of describing evolution. And one of the things that we describe ourselves is we practice evolutionary branding. And so, again, was a great fit with Bill. But the way Bill Nye defines evolution is survival of the fittest. Is not the survival of the biggest and strongest and most powerful animals or creatures. Otherwise, all we'd have would be sharks and lions and humans in the world. What survival of the fittest means is about the fit, how they fit in their ecological niche. And it's the same way with branding agencies, marketing agencies, with clients, with restaurants, with just about anything. Is what's going to make you successful is how well you fit in with the ecosystem. And so when I say different and better than your competitors, it doesn't mean that you have to be different and better than everybody at everything. It means you have to be different and better for the people that you're looking to attract as a client, or a customer, or a member in the case of the Planetary Society. And then another cool thing about working with folks like Bill Nye, from an agency perspective, is we have another client, NREL, which is it's part of the Department of Energy, and it's the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, NREL. And they do all of like the green energy projects for the government and cool things like that. And they reached out to us because they were looking to work with influencers. And because of our relationship with other clients, we were able to propose using Bill as an influencer for the U.S. Department of Energy. So having previously worked with him put us like way up the pedestal with the U.S. Department of Energy. And then, it's a very sizable budget and a fun project. So Bill was very excited to be part of that as well. And, and so one of the cool things when you have really smart and really cool clients like that is you can kind of make introductions with other clients and create a mutually beneficial environment.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, I think working with Bill Nye definitely gives you quite a bit of clout or the Planetary Society for sure. And it's always nice when things come sort of full circle, when you can kind of introduce clients together that might be mutually beneficial and stuff like that. That's really, really cool. And also, David, I know that you're known as the nice guy in branding and marketing as well. Also with your documentary that came out recently, I think it was Kindness is Contagious, which I'm still meaning to watch. I really like that sort of vibe that you guys have going on. And it's really nice when you can attract clients.
I'll send you a free link to the documentary. We got excellent distribution.
I love that. Thank you.
We got excellent distribution, so unfortunately you have to pay for it. If you want to do Amazon or Apple TV and all of that, they declined to deal with Netflix because they wanted to make the money and Netflix wasn't paying them enough. However, I feel that a documentary about kindness should be free to everybody. And our distributor missed one important part of the rights, is they didn't take the educational rights. So we kept the educational rights. So I'll send you a free copy of the film. Anybody that hears this podcast, reach out to me at hello@smallprojectsbureau.com, and I will send them a free copy of the film as well, as long as you all promise to learn something from it.
Again, David, you are the nicest guy. Thank you. That's very sweet of you. And I do hope that the people watching this go and watch it, because I think it's an incredibly important topic to talk about, especially these days, with being kind in business and elsewhere as well.
Well, when you talk about with branding and with the behavior of a company, one of the things we learned from that film is that phrase, nice guys finish last, is totally bogus. Nice guys actually do very, very well. Nice people tend to make more money statistically over the long stretch. Nice people make way more money than not nice people. There's a few outliers that are these mean billionaires, whatever, but most of the narcissists are in prison. Most of the sociopaths are in prison. They aren't CEOs. So statistically, nice guys make more money. They have better jobs. They get more promotions. And then the thing that's surprising me most is nice people actually physically live longer than not nice people. These were scientists from places like Harvard University, Stanford University, UC Berkeley, extremely smart people that have proved that kindness really is a formula for success.
I'm glad I snuck in kindness is contagious, to be honest with you. I wasn't going to, but I'm glad I did, because I think it's awesome. So David, for clients like the Planetary Society and some of the other ones that you're working with now, I do wonder, what sort of key metrics and KPIs do they really focus on to measure success that you guys are doing with the projects that you're working with them on? And how, again, can smaller agencies better align their reporting to match the value that these bigger brands are looking for?
Yeah, it's interesting when you mention metrics for success. It is different for different types of clients. Folks like the Planetary Society, the U.S. Department of Fish and Wildlife, the Bipartisan Committee for Biodefense is also a client of ours. And what they're primarily trying to do is build awareness. So the metric for success for that is how many impressions did you get? Where were those impressions? And then we define them ahead of time, and then we have a target to hit. And then our goal is to hit that target. I think that applies for everybody in that sector, even smaller nonprofits. But I'd almost rather talk about another metrics for success, which is more retail businesses and B2B businesses, because I think this is where agencies often fail. And in the marketing standpoint, typically, I'd say, unfortunately, the marketing relationship that businesses have with their agencies is delivering ads. And so they'll hire an agency to do, say, an AdWords campaign or, a Meta campaign. And what they'll target as their metric for success, because it's easy, is how many clicks did they get from those ads. And honestly, when you're doing pay-per-click, it's the easiest thing in the world because you can't fail. Now, my marketing team would give me a hard time and say, oh, you need keywords, the right keywords and things like that, of course. But when you put in, it's fairly easy with the tools that we have, SEMrush and stuff like that, to kind of find the right keywords. Some of them are very obvious. But where the breakdown often happens is the agencies deliver the ads because they're pay-per-click. It's kind of hard not to. But the customer says, gosh, I didn't get any business from those ads. And then the agencies say, well, that's not my job. We delivered on our end. You're the one that has to close and get the customers. And so from the customer standpoint, that's very frustrating because all they want is business. So I think the key metric that we look at is the return on ad spend. And that's the only one that matters. But in order to do that, you can't just run the ads. You have to look at the website and you have to make changes to the website or wherever the ads deliver the traffic. And then you have to go, and we call this the Wheel of Fortune, by the way. Where we always start with strategy, what makes your organization different and better than your competitors. Then we deliver the strategy via ads. It could be billboards. It could be even postcards, flyers, places like DesignRush, and we deliver the messaging, in the form of a tagline, a slogan, something that says what you do differently and better than your competitors. But then you have to look at the website or wherever that traffic's going to and say, hey, we're getting the clicks, but are they becoming customers? And then you use tools like Google Analytics or, heat map software like Hotjar or Crazy Egg is the one that we use. We love Crazy Egg. Free promo there. But anyway, you look at the like how people are behaving on the website, and that's the analytics, or how they're behaving on the landing page, and that's the heat map software. And then the key to everything with that is you have to make adjustments based on those findings, and then reapply those adjustments to the ads, to the landing page, and then check to make sure that they've improved things. If they haven't, revert to what you had before and start over. But then adjust, apply to your ads, apply to your landing page, look at the data, adjust, apply to your ads, landing page again and again and again until it gets dialed in. And
Sure.
that is the Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah,
It's
rinse and
it's
repeat,
not
basically.
cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not cheap. Once you get it dialed in, then you can run the ads. But
Sure.
I see so many agencies get into arguments, and ourselves included back in the day, with their clients because they're like, hey, we delivered the ad. It's not our problem that nobody's clicking, that nobody's buying anything. They're clicking, but they aren't buying anything. And nothing's more frustrated to a customer than that.
Exactly. Okay, so also, David, with, you've worked with big corporations and startups and everything in between, right? Now, apart from this type of thing, right, what are some of the more common challenges that these larger brands face when collaborating with agencies from your viewpoint, of course? And how have you seen these challenges actually being overcome? And how can smaller agencies, again, learn from those solutions?
Okay, I'd say there's two of the biggest challenges that we see on our end. I'd say the biggest challenge probably is exactly what I just mentioned, that, hey, that we don't have a good relationship with our ad agency. We're not selling products. And the way to overcome that is you have to do the whole cycle, not just run ads, but look at where the ads are delivered, make adjustments, and so on, the Wheel of Fortune. The other challenge with the work that we do is I find is web development. We get a lot of businesses, big organizations, small ones that come to us because they're just frustrated with their web developers. Web development sucks. Excuse my French, but there's no other way to say it. Web development is horrible. It is enormously detailed. It's not as easy as people think it is in their head. And then because they think it's easy, it's actually very hard. You get a lot of frustrated clients. It's also an area where people tend to underbid quite a bit. So often people will choose a web developer because they're inexpensive. And then that web developer doesn't have the resources to do a good job. So the clients get very frustrated. Often the inexperienced web developers at that point ghost the clients. And so we get them, which is good, but we have to talk them down from a ledge too and kind of just walk them through carefully the project. Don't give them unrealistic expectations. And then back to the number one thing when you want to work with big brands and Fortune 500 companies is you have to be very, very good at what you do. We bring that to the small businesses, startups, and nonprofits that normally get stuck with the people that are just kind of learning. Not bad people, generally very smart, but they're just learning. And when you've built, we do probably 100 websites a year. When you do 100 websites a year, you know all of the pitfalls, everything that's going to happen. And so you try to communicate that to the client ahead of time. And that's how you solve the problem to keep them very delighted.
When brands are choosing an agency, so this is me flipping the script a little bit now, right?
Yep.
What are the questions that they need to be asking? So, for instance, can you give us like 3 essential questions that brands really need to ask to ensure that they're picking the right fit in an agency?
I'd say one of the questions are, I don't know if it's a question, it's something you should look at. I think the number one question that you should pose, or the thing you should look for rather than a question, is, are they a good fit with us? Do we like them? Do we get along with them? Do they seem like good people? Are they somebody that we'd like to be working with 10 years down the road? I think the most important working relationship with anybody is that fit. The second thing that they should look for is, do they practice what they preach? We had a client of ours that said, "Oh, we need to do video." And I said, "What's your budget for that?" Because video is phenomenally expensive to do well, even with AI tools. And they said, "Oh, we've got $150 to spend on the video." And then I said, "Well, gosh, you really can't do anything good with that. Take it out your iPhone and shoot it yourself." And they said, "Well, this agency says they can do it, and we need to do it in order to get traffic to our website."
Wait, so $150, not $150,000.
No, $150. And so I said, "Well, send me a link to this agency." And I looked at the agency, and they sure enough did a video themselves for their agency. And I looked at the views, and they had like 100 views for the video. And I said, "Gosh, you'd be, even at $150 for a video, you'd be throwing that $150 away when you could do a targeted pay-per-click campaign probably for half of that if you wanted just 100 clicks, And the thing that people often don't think about with those cheap videos as well is that it lowers the brand of your agency or your company, because they look at cheap video, they think cheap brand. And so that's really tricky. But to get back on the topic, check to see that the agency that you're looking at, that they practice what they preach, that they get the results for themselves that they're telling you that you're going to get by the work that they do. And then the third thing is, don't look at the agency's best work. Look at their worst work, because chances are they're not going to do their absolute best work for you, but chances are very good that they'll do better than their worst work.
That is a very, very good tip, because I've heard some of the other ones before when I've asked this question, and I haven't heard that one yet. So that's a really, really good one that I'm definitely going to keep in mind as well. Okay, so another thing that I wanted to ask you really quickly, David, is, how do bigger brands like, say, Kellogg's or Sony or whatever, right? I know you don't really focus on those types of brands anymore, but what I want to know is your expertise. So how do they stay ahead of trends and competition? And how can smaller agencies or brands really vie that way as well?
It's all about, what do you do differently and better than your competitors? What those big brands do is they spend a lot of money on research. We have an abbreviated version of that, because they'll hire firms like McKinsey and spend $300,000 on a research paper. The big brands do. Our clientele generally don't have the resources to do that. So we have the same people that did do that for some of these big research companies. We also have partners. But we do a very targeted approach of that, and we call it a landscape analysis, where we'll look at their 5 biggest competitors. We'll talk to 5 of their clients or customers or members, and we find out, what each of their competitors are doing well, what each of their competitors are doing poorly, because you have to be at least as good as your competitors at what they do well. And then finding out what they do poorly represents opportunity for this different and better part. And then once you've learned all of that, then the key to everything is, what do you do differently and better than the folks you just learned about? And that's your messaging that you broadcast to the world. And that's what big brands do to just the tiniest little itty bitty detail.
Okay, gotcha. Last thing that I want to ask you, David, is, I want to know, what are you doing at the Bureau of Small Projects right now? What are the 3 biggest opportunities you've identified for your agency in the next, say, year or two, or coming into 2025 soon, especially revenue growth opportunities, actually. And how are you busy pivoting to accommodate that going forward?
Okay, so there's several factors that go into that. One of the biggest revenue generating opportunities or life world changing opportunities, and I think everybody's addressing this, is AI. We've been working with AI companies, the people that have created the AI, for the last 10 years. In the last year, it's become, I'd say, commercially available and affordable for folks, and has been revolutionary. It's probably one of the biggest, I think it's probably the number one biggest thing that's hit our industry, even more so than digital and working with computers and stuff. So we're heavily, like the rest of the world, integrating it into our workforce. And then we're doing projects that are the coolest projects we've ever done. We're working with the Harlan Ellison Foundation to create an AI website for the author Harlan Ellison, who's a sci-fi author that passed away. This is his foundation, his legacy. And what we're doing, and he was incidentally also one of the original people who wrote about AI back in the 70s and 60s. He created the story that Terminator was created on. So it's a very cool thing to do this. But for the website, we're recreating a digital version of Harlan Ellison that you can ask questions, and it'll tell you details about his stories, where the inspiration was, anything that you could ask. The AI is training on all of his stories, on all of his little essays about the stories, to become kind of a digital version of Harlan Ellison. It is one of the coolest projects we've ever worked on. And I just can't believe we're lucky enough to do that now.
Oh my God. Okay, first of all, congratulations, because that sounds awesome. And second of all, I think he would have loved that. He would have absolutely loved that.
Yeah, I believe so too. And it's really, really cool diving into his life, learning about him. And in order to train the AI, we're going into all aspects of his life. They're turning his home into a museum. Yes, we digitally scanned the entire house, which was really cool, to recreate it, because part of the experience is going to be a walkthrough of his house. It is really, really, really cool.
Okay, that is some futuristic stuff right there. And that's when people say cutting edge, I think this is what they're talking about, because that's amazing. That's really awesome.
Oh, I can't wait until it launches, because surely it's going to attract a whole bunch of other cool work like that. It is by far the coolest thing we've ever done as an agency.
David, please promise me you will send me a link to that, because
I will do that. I
have to see it. That's going to be amazing. David, that's it for today. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me. It was an absolute pleasure.
Oh, likewise, Vianca. It was a pleasure talking with you. Anytime you want to do it again, I'm here for you.
Curious about what top brands look for when choosing an agency? Then tune into our latest episodes where we reveal the decision-making secrets of leading brands. Subscribe to the DesignRush podcast and stay ahead of the competition.